Meanwhile, at a tavern, a physician named Song made an entrance with an air of arrogance. He smirked upon hearing that a multitude of patients had come to see him. Well aware of his reputation as a renowned doctor, Song looked down upon Bong and Siak for not keeping pace with his fame. Song, relishing his status as a guest, inquired about his favorite courtesan. His satisfaction waned when he learned that she had already been booked. Undeterred, he insisted on having her, rejecting the suggestion to choose another woman. The host then summoned Hei Su, a young girl, to fetch Song's favored companion. Song smirked as he watched the girl depart, demanding her presence. However, the host refused Song's request, citing Hei Su's age as the reason. In the hallway, Hei Su encountered her sister, who offered her a snack for working overtime, setting the stage for a complex and intriguing narrative to unfold. In a heartwarming moment, Hei Su gently laughed and reminded her sister about their grandmother's death anniversary. Her sister confirmed that the madam had granted them permission and even provided guards for their safety. With these assurances, the two sisters parted ways, each carrying a sense of relief as they looked forward to returning home. Morning arrived, and Han couldn't help but notice the nervousness in Obo's demeanor. To dispel his apprehension, Han smacked Obo lightly and assured him that he had nothing to worry about. Han urged Obo to simply follow his instructions and do his best as his assistant during the upcoming surgery. Chung had prepared everything for the procedure, and Han took a moment to remind Obo not to let nervousness get the better of him. As the surgery began, Han brought out a pig's bladder, which would serve as an artificial manual breathing unit. With a steady hand, Han made the initial incision into the patient's abdomen, calling for a cauter to assist with the procedure. He noted the stable blood flow and reduced fat, which indicated that the surgery should progress smoothly. Han praised Obo's dexterity, recognizing that his own hands were not as steady as they once were. He expressed a wish for a portable X-ray machine, pondering what had triggered his unique power. Suddenly, Han's strange ability activated, revealing the presence of appendicitis. This unexpected development left him wondering about the catalyst behind his powers. In the midst of these thoughts, Obo observed that the patient had stopped breathing. Acting swiftly, Han grabbed the pig's bladder and initiated manual ventilation, pumping air into the patient's lungs. Once the patient's breathing was restored, Han skillfully sutured the incision, with Obo watching in awe. In such dire circumstances, most would assume the patient was beyond saving, but Han's remarkable skill had defied the odds. As the surgery concluded successfully, Han advised the patient not to drink water until he had passed gas. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the patient shed tears of thanks. Obo, profoundly moved by the life-saving act he had just witnessed, expressed his desire to learn how to save lives and become a doctor himself. Han acknowledged Obo's enthusiasm and encouraged him to be well prepared for the challenges that lay ahead. Chung arrived, astounded by the fact that a simple abdominal incision had saved his fellow blacksmith. He recognized Han's extraordinary talent and offered his thanks. Chung also noticed that Han carried no weapons in these perilous times, a testament to the physician's unwavering commitment to his healing craft. Han, in a moment of candidness, admitted to Chung that he was learning sword art for self-defense. Chung saw this as the perfect opportunity and walked over to a wall, selecting one of the swords he had crafted. He insisted that Han accept it as payment, even though Han initially tried to refuse the generous gesture. Chung believed that while Han might not use the sword to take lives, it could still prove useful to him. As a blacksmith, seeing his creation serve a purpose brought him great satisfaction. Han ultimately relented and accepted the sword, acknowledging its practicality. On the following night, word reached Physician Song about Lieutenant Cho contracting tetanus. Song couldn't help but laugh, assuming that they would undoubtedly call upon his expertise for help. However, the courtesan he was with seemed to have different information. She asserted that they wouldn't seek Song's assistance. This news shocked Song, who considered himself the finest doctor in the area. He protested, claiming that tetanus couldn't be cured without amputating the leg. The courtesan informed him that it was another physician who had successfully treated Cho's tetanus, Wabu, the third son of the Hua family. Song was taken aback, having never heard of this physician, and dismissed it as a case of someone impersonating a doctor. The courtesan couldn't help but wonder how Cho would react if he heard Song's words. Song, infuriated and bothered by the mention of Huabu, fell silent for a moment, slammed his cup, and abruptly left the scene, unable to shake off his unease. Meanwhile, the young physician who had become the subject of rumors was diligently training his inner ki. Focusing his energy into his fist, he struck a dummy target, causing it to split in half. Han was pleasantly surprised by the effectiveness of his efforts. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Are healers too weak? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now, back to the recap. Morning arrived, And in the Cho residence, Han demonstrated his inner key to the colonel. Cho observed with admiration as he recognized the genius before him, commending Han for his exceptional abilities. Curious about Han's interests, Cho inquired whether he had any inclination toward martial arts. Han, with a hint of humor, suggested that a doctor had no need for martial arts. However, Cho viewed such potential as a waste. Normally, it took a year for someone to manifest their inner ki, but Han's natural talent made him an exception. Reflecting on his abilities, Han lamented that he should have kept them concealed and jokingly wondered if he could split a thick board within a year. Cho chuckled heartily and decided to demonstrate his own inner ki by approaching a boulder and smashing it with a single strike, confidently asserting that Han could achieve such feats in 3 years. He encouraged Han to continue his training with dedication and perseverance. A sudden recollection jolted Cho's memory, reminding him of their work for the following night. The next day, Han returned to the Cho residence, expressing his complaints. As he approached the gate, he encountered Chung, and they exchanged greetings. The reason for their visit was the delivery of charcoal to the Cho residence. Chung had been asked to inspect it for quality. Upon entering the residence, they noticed a gathering of many merchants, including Jongpan. Chung promptly began examining the charcoal. Jongpan recognized Han. Cho appeared and inquired if they were prepared for the task at hand. To Jongpan's astonishment, he discovered that Han had a close relationship with the colonel. Cho then introduced Han to his cousin, Bu, and Ha from the Ministry of War, both of whom greeted Han warmly, having heard of his reputation as a remarkable physician. Jongpan couldn't believe his eyes and wondered why the Hua family hadn't already fallen from grace. Just then, Jongpan's father arrived, and Jongpan used the opportunity to get closer to the Cho family. The renowned blacksmith, Chung. Jongpan assumed a friendly demeanor toward Han, leaving Chung curious about their connection. Jongpan proceeded to recount the events involving his friend from weeks ago, and Han acknowledged the story. However, Chung detected an underlying tension in Han's demeanor whenever Jongpan was present. Jongpan then broached the topic of the abandoned mine, taking Han by surprise. Han initially tried to decline the offer, citing the expense involved. However, Jongpan made an unexpected proposal. He would grant Han the mine for free if Han could facilitate a connection between Chung and Jongpan's family. Jongpan eagerly anticipated a favorable outcome and left the scene, while Han wore a sly smile as he contemplated his next course of action. Shortly after their conversation, Jongpan's father was livid when he discovered that none of their products had been delivered despite his significant expenditure. Even his close acquaintances had refused his money, leaving him puzzled and frustrated. He questioned what Jongpan had discussed with Han. Jongpan admitted to making a deal with Han, offering to rent the closed mine for free if Han could speak on behalf of the blacksmith's head. This revelation drove Jongpan's father into a fit of rage, causing him to overturn a table in frustration. He angrily declared that Chung was on par with a noble and had essentially given away their property as rent. Accusing his son of madness, he demanded that Jongpan cease meddling in their business affairs. Jongpan, in tears, fell to his knees and begged for forgiveness, vowing to rectify the situation and make amends. Meanwhile, Hae-Su and her sister, Hai-Wan, were preparing to return to their hometown, Sochon. Their guard urged them to set off on their journey. As they arrived in Sochon, Hae-Su noticed a crowd of people in front of their house. The guard, observing the area filled with patients, wondered if Hae-Su had sold the house. She clarified that she had been renting it and hadn't anticipated it turning into a clinic, finding the situation peculiar. Hae-Wan spotted Obo and greeted him, introducing themselves to Han. Intrigued, the guard followed Han, revealing that he was Han's very first patient and expressing his gratitude for helping him lead a healthy life. He questioned why Han had established a clinic in such a place, despite being a renowned physician. Han explained that it was natural for a doctor to be close to their patients. Later, Hae-Su and Hae-Wan learned that Han was the one who had successfully cured tetanus. Obo proudly boasted about his master's accomplishments and mentioned his own aspiration to become a physician. Hae-Su then asked if Han could treat someone infected with syphilis, a sexually transmitted disease. The guard scolded Hae-Su for revealing sensitive information about the entertainment house, and she retorted that she didn't want to witness Seal's demise. The guard, in frustration, chided Hae-Su for divulging a name, and Han intervened to calm the escalating tension, considering the presence of other patients around. The guard expressed his pity for Seal and assumed that syphilis was incurable. Han assured him that he would keep what he heard a secret, and then asked for information about the patient's symptoms, such as skin abscesses and hair loss. Hae-Su grabbed Han and tearfully told him that the symptoms were worsening. She cried as she asked if there was a cure for syphilis. Han explained that syphilis is caused by a typical gram-positive bacteria and that penicillin could be effective, depending on the stage of the disease and the specific symptoms. In the secondary stage, with only skin lesions and mucosal disease, it is still curable. However, in the third stage, the situation becomes more complicated, and Han would need to personally assess the patient's condition. Ha-Su pleaded for Han to save Seol, but the guard cautioned her against taking action without the madam's permission, as it might inconvenience Han. He suggested waiting for the madam's approval first. Meanwhile, Colonel Cho arrived at the magistrate's office, where the assistant greeted him with admiration for his exceptional skills in both literature and martial arts. Impressed by Cho's reputation, the assistant granted him permission to access the document room. Cho entered the room with determination, hoping to uncover the identity of the traitor leaking information to the bandits. Suspecting it to be one of the county officials, he meticulously examined the answer sheets, closely scrutinizing the handwriting for clues that might lead him to the culprit. Unbeknownst to Cho, a suspicious individual noticed his actions and wondered if Cho had discovered something important. The suspicious person left the office to report to the elder. Back at the Hua residence, Han unsheathed the sword he had received from Chung and marveled at it. Knowing that he was ambidextrous, he contemplated holding a sword in each hand, but realized he hadn't mastered swordsmanship yet. He pondered how to ask Cho for training. At that moment, his second brother returned home looking dejected, mentioning that his master had come back, and he was diligently preparing for the upcoming military service exam. Han praised his brother's dedication and thought about the hardships his sibling had endured. His second brother noticed the swords Han had received and recognized their perfect balance and quality. Han mentioned that Chung had given one of them to him as a gesture of gratitude for treating the blacksmiths. His brother was surprised and assumed it was a treatment fee. Han corrected him, saying that it was a forced gift. Han then shared some of the challenging cases he had treated, including patients with tetanus and one with appendicitis. His brother was shocked that his younger sibling had saved people from life-threatening conditions and couldn't believe that Chung, known for his bad temper, had given such an extravagant gift. He wondered if the exaggerated rumors about Han were true all along. Han had intentionally spread the rumors about his medical prowess to convince his brothers to agree to their mother's surgery. When his second brother mentioned his master's granddaughter, Han initially thought it was related to their mother's situation. However, it turned out that the master was seeking a physician for his sick granddaughter and had heard about Han's treatment of Cho's tetanus. Han's second brother believed that this development would lead their first brother to approve of Han's abilities. Meanwhile, the guard, Hei-Su, and Hei-Won returned to the entertainment house, where the madam noticed the sisters' improved demeanor. The guard tried to excuse himself, but Hei-Su inquired if the madam had heard of the physician named Huabu. The madam was aware of the rumors about him. Hei-Su explained that she had met him and observed that he had been providing free medical treatment. The madam's expression darkened at the mention of Han, and she seemed troubled. On another front, an elder received a report that Cho had been conducting investigations. He expressed disbelief that they were in danger due to one foolish bandit. The man offering to deal with Cho persisted, but the elder cautioned against underestimating the Cho family's power. He inquired about Han and learned that Han had collected iron spikes and sold them to the Cho family for 100 silver coins, a price he found exorbitant and believed to be for the evidence. The man suggested moving against and eliminating the Hua family, but the elder emphasized that the Hua family was not worth exterminating. He solely wanted Han's head. Back at the entertainment house, the madam, her face etched with concern, turned to Hei-Su and asked in a hushed tone, "Do you think Han truly knows about syphilis?" Her voice carried a mixture of curiosity and worry, mirroring the shadows dancing in her eyes. Hei-Su, a trusted confidant of the madam, leaned in closer and replied, her voice soft and tinged with uncertainty. "Madam, I believe Han must examine the patient personally to be certain." She couldn't help but furrow her brows, wondering why such a deadly disease was haunting their lives. The madam, her gaze fixed on the flickering candlelight, sighed softly, her voice tinged with melancholy. "But why, my dear? Syphilis is a cruel fate, and none have ever escaped its clutches." She shook her head slowly, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes as she continued. "Although I've heard whispers about Han's remarkable talents, his miracles with soldiers on the brink of death, and the famous tetanus case of Cho, could he possibly cure syphilis?" Just then, the guard, a burly man with a gruff exterior, stepped into the conversation. His voice held a note of conviction as he suggested, "Madam, perhaps we should send for Han to make a house call. You remember how he saved my life when even Song had given up on me." He emphasized the potential benefits for everyone if Seol received treatment. The madam's eyes welled up with tears as she admitted, "I've been deceived too many times thinking Seol would get better." Her voice cracked, and she blinked back the tears, unable to give up on her beloved Seol. Seol, the third-generation beauty of the county, was a sight to behold. Men from far and wide would stand in long lines just to catch a glimpse of her unparalleled beauty. The madam's heart ached as she remembered this. She couldn't help but whisper, she was a woman of unmatched beauty. The madam wasted no time and went to visit Seol. Seol, her once radiant face now pale and gaunt, grabbed the madam's hand, her voice trembling with despair as she cried out, "I've held on for so long, madam. I can't bear to be a burden to you any longer." Her eyes, clouded with pain, sought solace in the madam's gaze. Seol wished for release from her suffering. "Please," she begged, "let me go while I am still in my right mind." Tears streamed down the madam's cheeks as she reassured Seol. "I've called for a physician, my dear. We will spare no expense to help you." She implored Seol not to utter those heartbreaking words again. With trembling hands, the madam continued, her voice filled with determination. "We will find a way, Seol. Even the best doctors in the world haven't been able to cure you, but we will search together for a doctor who can." The madam prayed silently for Seol to regain her senses and listened carefully, her heart heavy with the weight of their shared suffering. Meanwhile, Cho entered So-Bang's residence with a sense of urgency. He barked orders to his men to locate him, a hint of frustration creeping into his voice. Riding his horse, Cho couldn't shake the feeling that someone was aiding him, and the urgency to find So-Bang grew. Thoughts raced through Cho's mind as he wondered, could it be Go-dong or Su-dong? Are they the ones helping him? His horse galloped tirelessly as he continued his frantic search. Upon arriving at the residence, Cho scanned the area, his eyes darting around. His heart sank when he learned that Go-dong and Su-dong had been dispatched on So-Bang's orders. Suspicion clouded his face as he questioned their whereabouts. "They went to Garyokyo Bridge," the informant replied. Cho's eyes widened as realization struck him. The bridge was perilously close to Han's clinic, and worry for Han's safety gnawed at him. Without a moment to spare, he spurred his horse into action, determined to rescue Han from whatever danger might be lurking. Meanwhile, Han made his way to the concubine's house to treat Seol. The madam welcomed him warmly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes as she introduced Han to Seol. With a trembling hand, Seol accepted the doctor's presence. Clutching a bronze mirror for strength, she whispered to herself, "Stay strong, Seol. Maybe this doctor will be different." Her voice filled with a fragile hope that had been shattered so many times before. Han entered the room, his presence a reassuring comfort. He placed a gentle hand on Seol's shoulder and spoke softly. "Lie down, my dear. I understand your discomfort." Seol complied, resting on the bed, while Han proceeded to check her pulse. As he examined her, he detected inflammation in her lower area, realizing the pain she endured during bowel movements. Seol's eyes widened in surprise that Han understood her symptoms without her having to utter a word. Even the madam was astonished. Most doctors would have checked beneath her skirt. She marveled at how this young doctor knew about her painful affliction. With utmost care, Han prepared to begin the treatment, knowing it would be his first time using a syringe in this era. He meticulously applied medical penicillin, conducted an AST test, and found no issues. Gently, he injected the syringe into Seol's hand, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the shock most would have displayed. Han then turned to the madam, explaining the daily treatment plan. Someone will need to tend to all the wounds on Seol's body, applying medicine on a cotton cloth. He entrusted the task to the madam and prepared to take his leave. Gratitude filled the madam's heart as she watched Han. She had found a doctor unlike any other, and Seol, touched by his compassion, made a silent promise to trust him wholeheartedly in her battle against the relentless disease. As Han continued to attend to Seol, Cho rode his horse with urgency, racing to reach him. Meanwhile, Go-dong and Su-dong noticed Cho's frantic haste and swiftly sent a pigeon to inform Baek-yoon. They readied themselves to join Baek. Back at Han's clinic, Obo informed him that someone had been waiting. Han approached the visitor, a man who pleaded for his help to save his wife, who hadn't come with him. Han hesitated but asked for the patient's name. The man revealed himself as Baek-yoon, his face wearing a disconcerting smile that raised Han's suspicions. Still, Han couldn't ignore the possibility that the man's wife might be in critical condition. As they set off into the forest, Obo offered Han his sword, cautioning him about potential bandits in the area. Their journey continued cautiously, and when Baek received the pigeon's message from Go-dong and Su-dong, Han's unease deepened. Baek insisted that they needed to return quickly because his wife had fainted. As they walked deeper into the woods, Baek suggested a shortcut through the mountains, casting shadows of doubt and uncertainty over their path. Han's suspicions deepened with each step, his trained eyes noting the well-defined shoulders and muscular build of the man before him. It was a physique that didn't align with that of a typical businessman. Han knew he needed to confirm his suspicions, so he feigned a sprained ankle and, with a subtle request for assistance, maneuvered himself to a position where he could act. As he pretended to reach for acupuncture needles, Han's fingers deftly found the hilt of his sword. In one fluid motion, he drew the blade, his instincts taking over. Baek, too, reacted swiftly, creating distance between them as he realized that Han had uncovered his true identity. In a tense moment, both men stood ready, swords in hand. Bayek lunged forward, attempting to strike Han, but the doctor displayed a surprising agility, deftly dodging the attack and responding with a retaliatory slash. To Bayek's astonishment, Han's swordsmanship was far from that of a mere physician. It was a mistake to have underestimated him. Han too recognized the formidable aura emanating from Bayek, a hint that he was a skilled adversary. He knew he couldn't let his guard down. Another strike was launched, but Bayek eluded it with ease, recognizing that Han was still a novice in the art of swordplay. Seeing his chance, Bayek attempted a swift stab. In that critical moment, Han tapped into an inner reservoir of energy, and his leg propelled him backward with incredible speed, leaving Beck momentarily baffled by the sudden burst of agility. Capitalizing on the opening, Han surged forward, executing a swift slash at Beck, who tried to block, but had his sword cleaved in half. Han followed up with another attack, swiftly defeating his opponent. With Beck incapacitated, Han swiftly treated the man's wound, applying medicine and stitching it to prevent further bleeding. Sudong and Godong, who had been watching the battle unfold, moved to join the fight, but to their shock, they found Bayek had already perished at Han's hands. They marveled at the doctor's unexpected combat prowess. Aware that he needed to make a quick escape, Han sprinted toward the distant light at the edge of the forest. As he reached the villagers gathered outside, he sought their help, but they mistook him for a bandit due to his drawn sword and scattered in fear. Left with no other recourse, Han continued to run, his breaths labored. He knew he couldn't outrun Sudong and Godong in his current condition. Determination set in as he made the decision to confront them head-on, ready to face whatever came his way. Han moved with incredible speed, dashing towards Sudong and slashing at him, swiftly defeating his opponent. Godong, wide-eyed and astonished by his friend's rapid defeat, questioned the true identity of the remarkable swordsman before him. Han then turned his attention to Godong, his blade poised for action. Godong, showing impressive skill, managed to block all of Han's attacks. However, he could sense his sword beginning to weaken, knowing it wouldn't hold up for long against Han's relentless assault. With a sense of urgency, Han closed the gap between them, his movements precise and calculated. In a decisive strike, Han sliced Godong's sword in half. Realizing he couldn't win without a weapon, Godong made a quick decision to flee. Han attempted to prevent his escape, but Godong cunningly seized a child and held her as a hostage. Godong attempted to intimidate Han, threatening the child's safety. However, Han reacted swiftly, not allowing fear to cloud his judgment. With a well-aimed throw, Han sent a sword hurtling toward Godong. As Godong turned his head, the sword impaled him, putting an end to the threat he posed. Just as Han believed the danger had passed, Cho arrived on the scene to rescue him. Cho was amazed at Han's ability to defend himself against two skilled martial artists. He urged Han to return to the village, but Han's compassionate nature led him to check on the child's well-being first. Finding the child unharmed, Han comforted her and reassured her that everything would be all right. Cho couldn't help but admire Han's kindness. Upon their return to the clinic, Obo tended to Han's wounds while Han requested a private conversation with Cho. Sensing that Cho held valuable information, Han inquired about it. Cho revealed that the bandits were after Han, a revelation that made Han realize the seriousness of his situation. Despite Cho's offer to hire a guard, Han knew it wouldn't be sufficient, as they couldn't protect him at all times. Understanding Han's concerns, Cho made the decision to personally teach him sword techniques passed down through his family, alleviating Han's worries. As they discussed the bandits further, Han carefully contemplated the situation and deduced that the bandits were using carrier pigeons for communication. Cho was shocked, realizing that such a method required significant resources. It became clear to them that these were not ordinary criminals, but part of a larger, well-organized group. The gravity of his predicament weighed heavily on Han, understanding that his life was in grave danger. This concern led Cho to initially suggest hiring 2 bodyguards, but quickly reconsidered, proposing 3 instead. Han knew that the bandits wouldn't easily let him go and might even target his family. To regain control of the situation, Han proposed setting up a trap. Meanwhile, the elder, Lord Yu, fumed with anger upon hearing that 3 of his men had perished at the hands of a mere doctor. He struggled to believe that such a defeat had occurred. The bandit explained to the elder that their mission had failed due to Colonel Cho's interference, which had also resulted in the destruction of the magistrate's office. The elder's fury burned even brighter as he contemplated their setbacks. In addition to the elder's fury, the bandit shared unsettling news with him: the arrival of the Peace Lion in 10 days. This revelation filled the elder with worry, and he contemplated taking the Hayak, an antidote, to avoid a dire situation. Despite his initial reluctance, the elder decided against reprimanding the bandit and instead issued a chilling order: eliminate 10 of their own men, with a specific demand for Huabu, Han's head. The bandit expressed concern for his comrades, but the elder made it clear that sacrifices were inevitable, the cost of maintaining their secrecy and power. Meanwhile, Han paid another visit to Seol to continue treating her wounds, carefully using his syringe for injections. He informed Seol that her treatment was nearly complete, filling her heart with gratitude as she expressed her thanks. The madam, observing Seol's improved condition, wondered aloud about Han's plans to address Seol's facial scars. Han surprised them with his commitment, stating that he would work on removing the scars. Seol was deeply moved by his dedication and wondered how she could ever repay him. Han lightened the mood with a jest, mentioning the prohibition of not paying for something, known as sinpa. Although he couldn't guarantee complete scar removal, he vowed to do his utmost to help her. Han proceeded to apply acupuncture techniques to Seol's back, causing her to feel a sudden shyness and a fluttering heart. The madam, impressed by Han's medical skill, marveled at his composure despite Seol's exposed body. As the treatment progressed, the madam couldn't help but notice the change in Seol's expression, realizing that her feelings for Han had begun to bloom. With the treatment complete, Han instructed Seol to dress, a subtle blush on his own cheeks. The madam playfully teased Han for his newfound shyness, adding a light-hearted touch to the moment. Han explained the next steps of Seol's treatment, letting her know that she could begin using ointment from the following day, in the hope of expediting her recovery. The madam, with a twinkle in her eye, expressed her anticipation for Seol's treatment the next day. Upon returning to his clinic, Han found Gona, the bodyguard hired by Colonel Cho, patiently waiting inside, ready for whatever lay ahead. The following day, Han found himself contemplating the approaching end of autumn and the impending cold weather. He realized that he needed to prepare a room in his clinic for the winter months. As he worked on his preparations, his thoughts turned to the historical event of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, knowing that he would soon be treating more warriors affected by the conflict. Feeling the need to take action and further his medical knowledge, Han made the decision to travel to Jungwon. As he made his way toward the bridge that would take him to Jungwon, a rushing carriage suddenly approached, posing a grave danger to those in its path. In a tragic accident, the carriage collided with the child, sending the young one flying into the river. Han, a witness to the distressing incident, immediately sprang into action, rushing to provide first aid to the child who had fallen into the water. The occupants of the carriage callously ignored the injured child, but Han couldn't stand idly by and took it upon himself to rescue the helpless child. It became clear that the child's name was Dong, and his father, filled with anxiety, approached to check on his well-being. However, Han stopped the father in his tracks, explaining that any improper handling could worsen the child's condition. Upon examination, Han noticed troubling signs: an abnormally fast pulse, a pale complexion, and a chilling coldness to the child's body. Suddenly, Dong's stomach began to rapidly expand, and Han recognized the gravity of the situation. Dong was suffering from hematocelia, a condition in which organs or blood vessels in the abdomen burst, potentially leading to shock or even death due to severe blood loss. Aware of the urgency of the situation, Han knew he had no time to spare. The rider of the carriage stepped out to assess the unfolding crisis, while Dong's father, overwhelmed by fear and anger, threw a punch at the rider. However, the rider effortlessly defeated Dong's father in a swift and brutal confrontation. Han's disdain for the rider deepened, but the situation took an unexpected turn when a man from inside the carriage ordered the rider to halt. This man, as it turned out, was the rider's master. The master instructed the rider to provide compensation for the child's injuries and then depart. Han, however, remained focused on treating the injured child and urged Dong's father to seek assistance from Obo and bring him to the clinic. Carefully, he carried the fragile child back to his clinic, instructing Gona to prepare clean water and all necessary supplies for the impending medical emergency. Before long, the same carriage from the earlier accident arrived at the clinic, and the rider inquired about the whereabouts of the doctor. Han, filled with a simmering anger and a strong desire to protect his patient, ordered the rider to leave without hesitation. Han entrusted Gona with the task of keeping the rider at bay, ensuring that he wouldn't disturb the delicate surgery ahead. As Han focused on Dang's critical condition, he discovered that the child's organs had ruptured, leaving him uncertain about the next steps to take. Suddenly, the familiar screens appeared before him, revealing the presence of internal bleeding in the lower left abdomen. With clarity, Han knew exactly where to make the incision. Just as Obo arrived, Han instructed him to wash his hands and prepare for the upcoming surgery. The rider, realizing that Han was the doctor he sought, requested treatment for his master, but Gona intervened, firmly instructing him to wait outside. Enraged, the rider attempted to engage Gona in a physical confrontation, but Gona effortlessly dispatched him with a swift kick. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at userlu9kk1@9ze, who commented, "Nice vid on our world after the fall video." Thanks for commenting. The master emerged from the carriage, a figure of evident importance, and ordered his rider to cease his disruptive actions. It was then that Gona recognized the man before him as none other than Master Go, member of one of the most esteemed families. Gona had not expected someone of such high status to visit their humble village. Master Go, curious about Han's identity, inquired if he was indeed a doctor. However, Han firmly instructed Master Go to wait outside, emphasizing that he was in the midst of treating a patient. This bristled Master Go, who scolded Han for failing to understand his own place as a mere doctor. In response, Han advised Master Go to seek another physician, given his disrespectful attitude toward Han's expertise. Han even managed to diagnose Master Go's condition with a mere glance, recognizing the presence of a plum wound. Master Go interpreted Han's response as a challenge and a death wish. Fully aware of Master Go's significance and influence, Han expressed his hope that Master Go would find a more suitable replacement for his medical needs. Han further emphasized that without treatment, Master Go would not survive beyond 2 months. He meticulously explained all the symptoms and their potential fatal consequences, providing a stark and candid assessment of the dire situation. Master Go, stung by Han's unyielding words, responded with arrogance, mentioning that he could easily seek Shi Yui, a doctor in service to the king, to attend to his needs. In the face of such defiance, Han simply urged Master Go to pursue Shi Yui for his treatment and confront the reality of his impending demise within 2 short months. Fuming with anger, Master Go stormed outside, but he couldn't shake the memory of how Han had skillfully treated Seol's plum wounds. The thought began to take root in his mind that perhaps Han possessed the ability to provide him with the treatment he desperately required. With a calculated patience, Master Go decided to allow Han to tend to his medical needs. However, a dark and sinister thought crossed his mind. Once his treatment was complete, he would exact vengeance upon the entire village. As Master Go pondered his revenge, he grew increasingly curious about the severity of the child's condition. He returned to the clinic and observed in astonishment as Han performed a live surgery, cutting into a person's stomach with precision and skillfully suturing the wound. Master Go couldn't fathom the nature of the treatment Han was providing, leaving him bewildered and intrigued. Feeling the urge to relieve himself, Master Go ventured outside to find a secluded spot. He resented the inconvenience caused by his illness, as many doctors had refused to treat him due to the plum wound. After answering nature's call deep within the forest, Master Go returned to the clinic with the determination to closely monitor Han should the doctor decide to treat him. Unexpectedly, Dang's father arrived at the clinic, his anxiety palpable as he inquired about his child's condition. Han reassured him that the surgery had been successful and that his child was now safe. This revelation took Master Go by surprise, challenging the rumors and confirming Han's true skill. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.